Welcome to the channel, folks. My name's Shane. In today's video, we're going to see if we can internally shield the Rode Procaster to help combat the plosives. Now, recently on the channel, I compared this Rode Procaster up against the Shure SM7B. While this sounds fantastic, I actually prefer the sound of the Procaster, and they're far more affordable, but they have that issue with plosives, whereas the Shure SMB doesn't. As you can see, they've got a really big windsock on the outside of the microphone, and internally, the diaphragm's actually recessed quite a bit, so you don't have the same inherent issues you have with the plosives on the Procaster. Now, if we were to take this off, you'll see exactly what I mean. So we get a thin piece of foam in here, and we can take that straight out. So I've just purchased a whole lot of these different foam windsock protectors. Of course, you can always put one of these on the outside of the microphone, right? But one of the comments I saw come up on the comparison video was, I wish Rode just insulated the diaphragm a little bit better. So that's what we're going to do today, and I think this will work for a number of different reasons. The first one is that these microphones are pretty hot in the top end, so adding an extra piece of foam shouldn't really, if it dampens the high end a little bit, it doesn't really matter. So that's the first thing. And also, if you're on video, they don't look good with these on the front, right? So these look good with the foam windsock on the front of the microphone, and that just helps stop the plosives. But my biggest complaint is always the plosives, and I always see that come up in the comments section. So we're gonna basically see if we can butcher one of these to get it to either fit in there, or I'm gonna see if I can add an extra piece of foam on the inside or the outside of the existing piece of foam, and then fit it all back together with this on. And I have a feeling we're gonna get it to work, because there's a little bit of space in here, which I think should work beautifully. Now, after just looking at this and the way that that's actually fitted in here, if I cut a piece of foam to the size of the inside of this piece of metal, the actual case enclosure, I think that's all we'll need to do. So I'm gonna go grab some tools and I'll be back. The reason I bought 3 of these is because if one method doesn't work, at least I'll have plenty of foam to try other options. I think I'm gonna stick with this original piece of foam and just add an extra piece to the actual front of the microphone. So let's give this a shot. I'm actually just gonna cut this down until I get to the tip of the circle, because it's already sort of pre-fitted and pre-circular on the top. So pre-circular, pre-molded maybe is what I was trying to say. So we're gonna start with this, and it is too big, so I'm just gonna cut this down. And inside here as well, might be a little bit hard to see, I'm not too sure. You can actually see there's a circle in there, which looks almost like the right size, but I'm gonna start with cutting around just that little bit bigger. And you know, if this works, hopefully Rode start doing this as well, much more professionally, of course, than my butchered job. But already that looks like it's going to work, because it fits in there no problems. Now, what I'm also going to do, just make sure I've got all the loose bits off. All right, so getting this piece back in here can be a little tricky. What I found is if you sort of squish it on all sides and turn it a little bit, it will go straight back in. You just got to keep turning it past where you think you have to turn it to. Now, it does stick out a little bit, but there's actually a bit of play in the tip here. So we can put the bit here, put this in. And I want to thank the subscriber who mentioned that I wish Rode would pad these out a little bit better. So there you have it, it all fits. So this is awesome. If this works, a $3 fix might be all we need. So let's plug it in and see how it sounds in comparison to one that hasn't had the mod. What you're listening to now is the Rode Procaster, as it is with all of its plosiveness glory. So you're hearing me talking directly into the front, which a lot of people do. And you don't always get those plosives, but sometimes you do, and they can just absolutely peak out your sound card. And now we're going to go over to the modified one, which feels like it needs a bit more preamp gain. So hang on. And now with a bit more preamp gain, I don't have any plosives. And I feel like this has added that top end back into the signal. And let's try some plosives up close. It might get a few right up close like this with a lot of gain, but it sounds easily as nice now as this one without any of the issues with the plosives. So I think we've fixed this. I think this is completely usable, completely usable. All right, damn, I think I needed a little bit more foam in there. So I may have cut it down a little too fine. So I'm going to add a little bit more foam back to this. I think we can get away with it. So I cut it down to about half the thickness of the initial windsock. I think I just need a little bit more than that. So I'm going to do exactly the same thing I just did before, except now I'm going to make sure I don't cut it quite as much. So I'm going to cut the end off. It's basically a pair of scissors, the easiest mod in the world. And what I'm going to do now is just cut it down so it's thinner than this. That's the idea. And I found the easiest way is just to go around basically from the top like this. What I'm going to do is actually leave it fairly thick in this one to start with. I'm just going to make sure it fits flush with the top of the actual cap here. And I think that'll be about it. I'm going to have to add a little bit more gain to the microphone, I think, just to compensate. But you know what? When you're running an SE Dynamite or a DBX or a Cloud Lifter or whatever, you'll have plenty of gain. So yeah, I'm just going to chop this down a little bit more here. See if we can get that to fit. And that, it's a bit big on the sides. Actually, I'm going to just go with that. Let's see if that works. You're currently listening to my shirt microphone, by the way. Any of the shots where I'm not talking directly into the mics, because I don't want you to hear the scratchiness. All right, how's this Rode Procaster sound? It sounds ridiculously good with no plosives. No plosives. No plosives. All right, the gain on this one's a little louder now, but I think you get the point. Now, if you're wondering what kind of windshields I'm using, it doesn't really matter, right? All you need to do is find ones that are circular, and the smaller the better, because you're going to try and fit it in the cap of the microphone. So that's the plan. Now, I'm going to cut this one up and replace the one that's in here, and then I'll do a final sound test. And then also coming up on a future video really soon, I've got my hands on the Procaster Pro. It's actually sitting right down here. I bought it just before Christmas, haven't even unboxed it yet. So if you want to hear my thoughts about that, come back and subscribe. So I'm just going to do the same thing I did on that last one before. You know, this one actually feels like a different material. So maybe that's why it responded differently. Yeah, see, we've got some different material here. The $1.95 ones are I think the better choice, actually. Let's have a look. Yeah, the $1.95 ones have like a more dense foam. So I'm just gonna cut all these up. It seems like a waste, but seriously, this is gonna be so much better than having big, ugly wind filters in front of the camera. So yeah, I think this is gonna be great. And also, if you're thinking, hey, does this work on microphones like the Rode PodMic, for example, or any other microphone? If you can take the grill off at the front, you're going to be in luck. Now, I've actually got a Rode PodMic in the other room, so I've got one of these left. We might do that as well on a future video. But as of right now, I think we're pretty much good to go. Let's see how that fits. And lastly, let's take a listen to the Rode Procaster with the final piece of foam on the inside, piece of foam on the inside. I think I've got the gain set up differently on these mics, but they sound very, very comparable now, minus their output level. So yeah, I can still hear that the plosives, or those big P and B words, are making the bass respond more, but it's not sounding like my audio interface is clipping, which is great. Like, plosives can generally spike your audio level or your input level on your interface, causing distortion, but it just sounds like a lot of bass now. Anyway, I think this has worked. Let me know your thoughts. Thank you, dude. If I can find the comment who suggested this, thanks for the idea. I really feel like this would be a great thing to do. I hope Rode addresses this with, maybe releasing, if you've bought one of these microphones, maybe they can make their internal shielding a little bit thicker. That would be fantastic, because not everyone who's using these wants to run it with something, covering their face, because we're going to be doing a live to air podcast in this room coming up. And the last thing you want is, a big thing covering your face. So it is what it is. Not everyone's in the same position, but I feel like This has made the microphone far more usable, as well as this microphone. I think they both sound really great now, and without really sacrificing too much of the top end. I think the top end could be sacrificed that little bit more anyway, because these are very bright. It sounds probably more comparable to this now than it did before. Thanks for watching. Catch you soon. See ya.